who has just been charged with 45 months for his whistleblowing. And this photo is by Glory Jones of Slow Day News Show. Will a simple list of what Daniel he opposed the widespread murder of civilians by strikes. Those same strikes, Obama did 10 times more than his predecessor, George W. Bush. This is up to 10 years prison for revealing information in the public interest. U.S. government threatens to use further charges if unsatisfied with harshness of sentence. Left to decide whether to act, I only could do which I could do before God's own conscience. The answer came to me that to stop the cycle of violence, I had to sacrifice my own life and not that of another person. So I'm gonna go with a couple Chris Hedges stories. Honestly, one of the best left journalists we in the country. So this came 2 weeks ago. We'll go into some key points of his from yesterday. Daniel Hale, an active Air Force intelligence analyst, stood in the occupied cabinet in Cody Park in October 2011 in his military uniform. He held up a sign that read, "Free Bradley Mann," who had not yet announced her transition. It was a singular act of few in uniform to replicate. He had taken a week off his job to join a protest in the park. He was present at 6 a.m. on October 14th. Mayor Bloomberg made his first attempt to clear the park. He stood in solidarity with thousands of protesters, including many unionized transit workers, teachers, teamsters, and communication workers who formed the park. He watched the police pack down as the crowd erupted in cheers. This act of defiance and moral courage was only the beginning. At this time, Hale was stationed at Fort Bragg. A few months later, he deployed to Afghanistan's Bagram Air Force Base. He would later learn that while he was in Zuccotti Park, Barack Obama ordered a drone 12,000 miles away in Yemen that killed Abdul Rahman Anwar Awlaki, the 16-year-old son of radical cleric and U.S. citizen Anwar al-Awlaki, who had been killed by a drone strike 2 weeks earlier. The administration claimed it was targeting the leader of Al-Qaeda, the Arabian Peninsula, Ibrahim al-Bana, who it believed incorrectly was with the and his cousins, all of whom were killed in the attack. That massacre of innocents became public, but there were thousands more such attacks that wantonly killed non-combatants that only Hale and those with security clearance about. Starting in 2013, Hale, while working as a private contractor, 17 classified documents about the program to investigative reporter Jeremy Scahill. Although the reporter is not named in court documents, the leaked documents published Intercept exposed that between January 2012 and February 2013, U.S. Special Operations killed more than 200 people. Of those, only 35 were the intended targets. For one 5-month period of the operation, according to the document, 90% of people killed in airstrikes were not the intended targets. The civilian, usually innocent bystanders, were meaningfully classified as enemies in action. So what this story will get into is how the Intercept cannot be trusted to be protect their sources in these situations like this. And the fact that the United States tries to paint itself in a real light when reality is that when it comes down to it, these acts of imperialism is just really violence on innocent people. Hale was coerced by Biden's Justice Department on March 31st, plead guilty to one count of violating the Espionage Act, a law passed in 1917 designed to prosecute those who passed on state secrets to a hostile power, not those who exposed public government by some crimes. Hale, as part of the plea deal to retention and transmission of national security information and leaking 11 classified documents to a journalist. He is being held in Alexandria Adult Detention Center in Virginia as he awaited sentencing on yesterday. If he used the plea deal, he could have spent 50 years in prison. Now he faces up to a decade in prison. And we'll go down, skip half. Daniel Hale is one of the most consequential whistleblowers, Edward Snowden said on a May Day panel at the University of Massachusetts Amherst on the 50th anniversary of the release of the Pentagon Papers. He sacrificed everything, an incredibly great person, to tell us that the drone war, that, is obviously occurring to everyone else, but the government was still officially denying in so many ways. It is here, it is happening, and 90% of the casualties in one 5-month period are innocents or bystanders, or not the target of the drone strike. We cannot establish that. We cannot prove that without Daniel Hale's voice. Speaking on Democracy Now!, a few weeks later, Daniel Ellsberg agreed that Hale acted very in a way that very few officials have ever done in showing the moral courage to separate themselves from criminal activities and wrongful activities of their own administration and resist them as well as exposing them. That right there is a big reason, in my opinion, why it's very to pass up U.S. military, and why it's acceptable to were in the era to a list when drafted. Well, I would consider very courageous to refuse to join the military when called upon. Especially when, understandably, they dangle a opportunity to get out of poverty, since that's what really is what keeps people coming into the military days. Because Hale was charged under the Espionage Act, like other whistleblowers, including Chelsea Manning, Jeffrey Sterling, and John Kuriakow, who 2.5 years in prison for exposing the routine torture of suspects held in black sites, was not permitted to explain his motivations and attend to the court, nor could he provide evidence to the court that the drone assassination program killed and wounded large numbers of non-combatants, including children. He faced trial in the Eastern District of Virginia, much of whose population has links to military or intelligence community, whose courts have become notorious for their harsh sentences on behalf of the government. The 2012 Living on Drones report by the Stanford International Human Rights and Conflict Resolution Clinic provides a detailed documentation of the human impact of U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan. Drones often fire Hellfire missiles that are equipped with an explosive warhead of about 20 pounds. A Hellfire variant known as R9X carries an inert warhead, the New York Times reported. Instead of exploding, it hurls about 100 pounds of metal through a vehicle. The missile's other feature includes 6 long blades tucked inside, which deploy seconds before it splice up any its path, including, of course, people. The number of civilians dead from U.S. drone strikes run into the thousands, not tens of thousands. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism, an independent journalist organization, reported from June 2004 to mid-September 2012, drone strikes killed between 2,562 and 3,325 people in Pakistan, of whom an estimated 474 to 881 were civilians, including 176 children. Drones hover 24 hours a day in the skies over Iraq, Somalia, by the way, which the Biden administration has just started to bomb, Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Syria. Without warning, the drones operate remotely from the Air Force bases as far away as Nevada, fire ordinances that operate homes and vehicles or kill whole groups of people in fields or attending community gatherings, funerals, and weddings. The leaked banter of the young drone operators, who often treat the killings as if they are an enhanced video game, exposes the callousness of the indiscriminate killings. Drone operators refer to child victims of drone attacks as fun-sized terrorists. Hello, Daisy. Ever step on ants and never give it another thought? Michael Haas, a former drone operator for the U.S. Air Force, told Guardian. That's what you are made to think of the targets as the black blobs on a screen. You start to do these psychological gymnastics, easier to do what you have to do. They deserve it. They chose their side. You have to kill part of your conscience to keep doing your job every day and ignore those voices telling you this wasn't right. Down a few paragraphs. Hale, 33, always had doubts about the war. He enlisted in 2009 when Obama assumed office. He hoped Obama would undo the excessive and lawlessness of the Bush administration. Obama really was one of the bigger liars when it came to campaigning on ending wars. Instead, Obama, a few weeks after he took office, approved the deployment of an additional 17,000 troops to Afghanistan, with 36,000 U.S. troops and 32,000 NATO troops were already deployed. By the end of the year, Obama increased troop levels in Afghanistan again by 30,000, doubling U.S. casualties. He also massively expanded the drone program, raising the number of joint strikes from several dozen the year before he took office to 117 his second year in office. By the time he left office, Obama had presided over the killing of at least 3,000 suspected militants and hundreds of civilians. He authorized what are known as signature strikes, allowing the CIA to carry out drone attacks against groups of suspected militants without positive identification. He spread the footprint of the drone war, establishing drone bases in Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and other overseas locations to expand attacks to Syria and Yemen. The Obama administration also indicted 8 whistleblowers under the Espionage Act, more than all other previous administrations combined. The Obama administration, like the Trump and Obama administrations, continue to launch widespread global drone attacks. And before anyone tries to bust out their good old bullshit partisan arguments of why we shouldn't be for trying to advocate for Julian Assange, just remember that this war machine, the attacks against whistleblowers, is nonpartisan. Before I joined the military, I was well aware that what I was about to enter was something I was against, that I disagreed with, Hale says in the 2016 documentary film National Bird. I joined anyway out of desperation. I was homeless, desperate. I had nowhere else to go. I was on my last leg. The Air Force was ready to accept me. In the film, Hale alludes to a difficult and chaotic childhood. It's kind of funny, a little ironic, because so far I'm the only adult male in my entire family, immediate and external, who had not been in prison so far, he says. I come from a long lineage of prisoners, actually a very proud tradition of fuck-ups. Get drunk, go driving, or sell pot, or carry a gun when they have a gun. In the wrong place at the wrong time, a lot of that where I'm from. He was assigned to Joint Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg and underwent language and intelligence training. He worked for the National Security Agency in Afghanistan as an intelligence analyst, identifying targets for the drone. His secret sensitive compartment information TS/SCI security clearance and access to the vast global drone war hidden from public view and Obama's huge secret kill list. There are several such lists used to target individuals for different reasons. He titled Why I Leaked the Watchlist Documents, originally published anonymously in the book Assassination Inside the Government's Secret Drone Warfare Program by Jeremy Scahill and the staff of The Intercept. The book is based on the leaked documents provided by Hale, which appeared as an 8-part series called The Drone Papers, published by Intercept. Some lists are closely kept, others span multiple intelligence and law enforcement agencies, Hale writes in the essay. There are lists used to kill or capture supposed high-value targets, and others threaten to kill, coerce, or simply monitor a person's activity. However, all the lists, whether to kill or silence, originate from the terrorist identities data environment, or they are maintained by the Terrorist Screening Center at the National Counterterrorism Center. The existing tide, unclassified yet details how it functions in our government, are completely unknown to the public. In August 2013, the database reached a milestone of 1 million entries. Today, it is the thousands of entries larger and growing faster than it has since the inception of 2003. When the gets up in front of the nation and says they are doing everything they can to ensure there is near certainty that there will be no civilians killed, he is saying that because he can't say otherwise, because anytime an action is taken to finish a target, there is an amount of guess in that action, Hale says in the film. It's only in the aftermath of any kind of ordinance being dropped that you know how much actual damage was done. Oftentimes, the intelligence community is resilient. The Joint Special Operations Council, the CIA included, relying on intelligence coming afterwards that confirms who they were targeting was killed in the strike or they weren't killed. The people who defend drones and the way they are used say they protect American lives by not putting them in harm's way. So what they really do is embolden decision makers, because there's no threat, there's no immediate consequence. They can do the strike, they potentially kill this person they are just so desperate to eliminate because of how potentially dangerous they could be to the United States. But if that just so happens that they don't kill that person or some other people involved in that strike gets killed as well, there are no consequences for it. When it comes to high value targets, every mission you go after one person at a time, but anyone else killed in that strike is assumed to be an associate of the targeted individual. So as long as they can reasonably identify all the people in the field view of the camera are military-aged males, meaning to be age 16 or older, that they are a legitimate target under the rules of engagement. If that strike occurs and kills all of them, they just say, got them all. Those are seriously some really fucked up standards and rationalizations when they go through the process of executing a attack. And when it's this easy and this convenient, the rationalization for this really makes it even worse. Let's jump to this next Chris Hedges story, as this one entail more of the charges that came down through the court yesterday. Daniel Hale, the former intelligence analyst for the Air Force, who was a private contractor in 2013, leaked documents about strikes to the press, was sentenced to 45 months in prison. The documents published by The Intercept on October 15, 2015, exposed that between January 2012 and February 2013, U.S. Special Operations airstrikes killed more than 200 people. Of those, only 35 were the intended targets, and 90% were killed in the airstrikes were not intended targets. The civilian dead, innocent bystanders were routinely classified as enemies killed in action. The Justice Department quoted Hale, who was deployed in Afghanistan in 2012, March 31st, plead guilty to one count of violating the Espionage Act. As part of the plea deal to retention and transmission of national security information and leaking 11 classified documents to a journalist. If he had refused the plea deal, he got spent 50 years in prison. Let it be known, as someone who supports whistleblowers, this little over 3.5 years charge, even though it's 90+% less than what a 50-year charge could have been, it's still really fucked up. The fact that he had to get charged for exposing this corruption at all, knowing that there's so many war criminals out there who not only go unpunished for their crimes, held completely unaccountable, but even worse, they are idolized by some set of people in this country. It started with George Bush, but then he got rightfully demonized by some liberals for the war crimes he committed while in office. But then Obama came in, committed significantly more war crimes as someone who campaigned in 2008 on ending wars, yet liberals are mostly silent on that. Then Trump comes in. He also campaigned on ending wars. While he didn't aggressively add troops in many instances, what happened as consequences of Trump is liberals started to sanitize George Bush because he had instances where he pushed back against Donald Trump. And you know why sentencing of whistleblowers is such a big problem here? It's because this is always a huge issue when it comes to freedom of the press. If we don't have freedom of the press for our whistleblowers, then that's going to kill the freedom to get anything else done that is transformative, independent of this oligarchy that we have in the United States right now. The group Stand with Daniel Hale has called on President Biden to pardon Hale and end the use of the Espionage Act to punish whistleblowers. It is also collecting donations from Hale's legal fund, the bipartisan slot against the press. Barack Obama used the Espionage Act 8 times against whistleblowers. By criminalizing those within the system who seek to inform the public is ominous for our democracy. It is effective extinguishing all investigations into the inner workings of power. Using the analogy of taking out a sniper with his sights set on an unassuming crowd of people, the president likened the use of drones to prevent a would-be terrorist from carrying out his evil plot. But as I understood it to be, the unassuming crowd had been those who lived in fear and terror of drones in their skies, and the sniper in this scenario had been me. Hale, in a handwritten letter to Judge Liam O'Grady on July 18th, explained why he leaked classified information writing that the drone strikes and the war in Afghanistan had little to do with preventing terror from coming into the United States, and a lot more to protecting the profits of weapons manufacturers and so-called defense contractors. At the top of the 10-page letter, he quoted U.S. Navy Admiral Jean LaRocque speaking to a reporter in 1995. "We kill people without ever seeing them. Now you push a button 1,000 miles away. Since it's all done by remote control, there's no remorse. And then we come home and in my capacity as a signals intelligence analyst at that air base, I was made to track down the geographic location of handset cell phone devices believed to be in the possession of so-called enemy combatants," Hale explained to the judge. To accomplish this mission required access to a complex chain of globe-spanning satellites capable of maintaining an unbroken connection with remote pilot aircraft commonly referred to as drones. Once a steady connection is made and a targeted cell phone device is required, an imagery analyst in the U.S. in coordination with a drone pilot and camera operator would take over using information I provided to surveil everything that occurred within drone's field of vision. This was done most often to document day-to-day lives of suspected militants, sometimes under the conditions. An attempt at capture would be made. Other decision to strike and kill them where they stood. Now rather ever I encounter an individual that drone offer is justified reliably keeps America safe, I remember that time and ask myself, how could I possibly continue to believe that I am a good person, deserving of my life, and the right to pursue happiness? And right there is the problem with the military-industrial complex. They say that they're protecting the United States from terror when a lot of it is unfounded. And a lot of what they really do is try to seize goods and control them for themselves, and try to functionally control how other countries run. Let's close with this. Through stress, particularly stress caused by war, can manifest itself at different times and in different ways. The telltale sign of a person affected by PTSD and depression could often be outwardly observed and are practically universally recognizable. Hard lines above the face and jaw, eyes once bright and wide, now deep set and fearful, and explicitly sudden loss of interest in things that used to spark joy. Those are the noticeable changes in my demeanor marked by those who knew me before and after military service. To say that the period of my life spent serving in the United States had an impression on me would be an understatement. It is more accurate to say that it irreversibly transformed my identity as an American, having forever altered the thread of my life story weaved into the fabric of our nation's history. When you look at this and what the military really does, and how what now recently women are required to now be enlisted in the same way that men are. Tell me how this is supposed to be a good thing. You can fall for the identity platitudes with this rainbow military coalition. When it comes down to it, the actions that the U.S. military takes and is ordered to do is highly unethical. And Daniel Hale had a lot of courage to decide to come out against this. I imagine a lot more former military members do the same on a smaller scale. They just don't have like classified documentation that they leak. But don't listen to bullshit artists like Tony Blinken talk about freedom of press when issues like these are not in the best interest of a freedom of press. If there's one thing that is clear about the state of the country and where we are right now, as this Biden administration is cracking harder on dissent, especially that dissent to the left, is that we need more whistleblowing to come forward as we expose the corruption of the United States government for what it really is.